This is an admittedly harder review because I wanted to love this book, and it fell a bit short. Of course we want to love anything we read, but there are books we're rooting for from page one. Books whose premise is so delicious we can't wait to see it unfold as we turn the pages. We don't just want to read, we want to step outside of ourselves and watch ourselves read with joy. We want to say, wow, I'm loving this book right now. And we want to come out of the book at various times just long enough to see ourselves saying that. Enjoying the enjoyment, if you will. Lights on the Sea, a novel about two elderly people who find themselves stranded in a house floating down the sea, is the kind of book with the kind of premise you're expecting to be glued to, slap flipping the pages and scrolling through your e-reader so fast you can't remember where you are. Alas, that turned out to be less true than I expected. The components are there: older couple, fabulous description of the high cliff on which their house is perched, the tenuous way the house is anchored to the cliff, storms, tragic earlier lives, and a violent sea. Surely when this house goes, with these characters in it, we should be in for the ride of, well, their lives. Somehow though, the book is not as compelling as those components would suggest. As I read and kept wanting more, I thought about why Reina was falling short. I think it comes down to the two main characters, Harold and Mary Rose, the couple whose house falls. From the earliest pages, there just isn't enough character development for us to have buy-in to what happens later. Harold comes across as petulant and self-centered versus simply as a flawed but likable man. It's okay to have wholesale unlikable characters in any story, but it's tougher to get behind people we like less when they're in peril. We need to like Harold and Mary Rose for this story to work well, I think. We see Harold in flashback and he's petulant then too. So in Harold we have a sort of lifelong selfish guy who has dragged his wife to this house on the cliff not because of a life-altering event, although I think Reina wants us to see him that way, but because Harold is impulsive and short-sighted and sees things through the lens of what he wants, so much so that he makes self-serving decisions that are hard to sympathize with. Meanwhile, Mary Rose, having dealt with her own battles, seems to go along, but we don't see anything in her character that explains why. She has very little fight in her, or very much of an identity that is separate from her existence as Harold's wife. It's hard to root for someone who doesn't really root for themselves. We find out much later why she may lack any interest in her own life, but by then, it's kind of too late. We needed earlier character development to care why she just seems to follow and worry about Harold. And then we're off on this somewhat claustrophobic journey with these two underdeveloped characters, one who's not all that likable. We spend a good chunk of the book with just them. I found myself frustratingly unengaged with Harold or Mary Rose, yet they were all we had in many places in the book. From a writing standpoint though, Reina has a fantastic way of describing the surroundings and the meticulous micro moments of key action. I'm trying not to spoil, so let's say someone is stuck up a tree, which doesn't actually happen, but I'll use it as a non-spoiler fake example. Reina is good at describing exactly how that would play out, the person's predicament, their interactions with the branches, the leaves blocking their view, etc. In other words, he puts you right there. It may seem easy to have someone stuck in a tree, but you have to think about the height, the discomfort, a person's footing, that moment when they try to map out a strategy for getting down the tree. For a book that takes place mostly outdoors, with Harold and Mary Rose up against innumerable challenges, Reina's skill at moving us from place to place with beautifully crafted clarity and a lack of unnecessary minutia that can come with description is definitely the reason I kept reading this book. The irony though is that Reina is inadvertently repetitive as he revisits certain events multiple times as Harold and Mary Rose ponder those events while they try to confront the next hurdle. Thus, on the one hand, the book could have used more character development, but on the other hand, seeing again and again Harold's and Mary Rose's thoughts about the same few events made it a sloggy read at times. Reina also falls into a pattern of adding, quote-unquote, one more thing before a character exits a predicament. So, using a non-book example again, it's like a person gets stuck, and then their shoe falls off, and a light goes out, and they bump their head, and they trip one more time, and they burn their finger, and then they get out of the jam. Lots of, right before it's about to work out, a dog runs up and bites me. Again, not real book examples, because I don't like to spoil, but dragging out predicaments with one more thing felt like a tool to keep the action going because Reina knew he only had the house on the sea and two characters to work with, but it became frustratingly predictable. It was difficult not to just skip over the calamity and get to the resolution. All the above said, Catherine E. Nelson's translation is excellent. As we all know, good translation is more than simply telling us what the words are in the new language. A novel is supposed to move and entertain us, and even teach us and provoke our thoughts. A good translation must achieve those same things, which means finding the proper rhythm, beat, and cadence, in addition to the meaning of the words, to form a good novel reading experience. Nelson does a great job of communicating the tension, fear, stress, emotion, and all the feels in her translation of Reina's words. And to be sure, there comes a point when the cast of characters expands, and with more people to work with, Reina's load ironically gets lighter, because there are more characters to help carry the story, and I noticeably scrolled through my e-reader at a much faster pace. The next thing I knew, I was at the 85% mark and almost done with the book. Reina and Nelson make hanging in there absolutely worth it once book world expands a bit. It's genuinely a great story. Lights on the Sea provoked my thoughts about life, regrets, do-overs, and the processing of pain. The dreams that come with the read, you could say. I'll read Reina again, and my biggest surprise is that I'll actively look for books translated by Nelson. She did a phenomenal job with Lights on the Sea. Being trilingual myself, well, bilingual and a half, since I mostly only understand French these days and don't really speak it anymore. I think I'm only solidly fluent in 2 languages, with French kind of straggling along. I know that getting even just one word wrong can lift the curtain, if you will, on the fact that you're reading a translation. And when I say wrong, I don't mean incorrect, because that doesn't usually happen. I'm talking about awkward word choice, which I'm guessing we've all seen in translations. Even if the words are technically correct, clunky phrasing or poor word choice can take you out of the read. Nelson gets an A+ and 5 stars for her translation. You absolutely forget you're reading an English translation of a novel written in Spanish. Not one sentence has an awkward turn of phrase or offbeat word choice. I think many readers will enjoy this book for the journey, the introspection the pace allows, the existential questions it raises. Despite my wishing there had been greater character development and less repetition, I still recommend this book. Take the journey and see what you find. Have you read Lights on the Sea? Let everyone know in the comments section, and please share what you thought of the book, or tell us what else you're reading. A link to where you can find this book and links to other reading suggestions are in the description. And please like, share, and subscribe. That's all from LA and Perchance to Read today. I hope you'll come back to the channel for what's next, to let us know what you're reading, and to see what dreams may come when you enjoy the read. Thanks for watching.